Gonzo, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Born and brought up in Bombay. I tried studying science in college, but I couldn't, for various reasons, I couldn't, manage it. I was pushed into commerce. I lasted only about 2 years. And then, for lack of an option, I did arts. And all these things led me slowly towards images. And once I was done with college, then I came across this photographer at Priyadarshini Park. I saw him and I was like, अरे मेरे को भी यही करने का है, कितना cool लग रहा है, and things like that. तो उसके साथ दोस्ती हो गई and he gave me a very hard time in the beginning. 6 बजे बुला के फिर 12 बजे आता था, 7 बजे बुला के 1 बजे आना, ऐसा वैसा. So then slowly I figured that there are lots of things that are being taught without the actual act of making photographs. On the same side, my family was like, what is this guy doing again? Like completely lost and क्या bag लेके जाना, photo खींचना as a hobby, like it does not become a profession till the time you actually bring in like a few lakhs of rupees a month, which is going to be increasingly difficult here on. So this photographer Srinivas was with Indian Express. I hung out with him and I made my own contacts on the side, of the profession. And like a number of times I was told that why don't you try for like a slightly more commercial form of photography, like architecture, etc. and everything. I don't know why, I was just not enamored by it. Like I went to see one very famous fashion and Bollywood photographer's studio, and at that age, at 19, 20 or 21, I think, I figured that the final image that this man is producing is really not his own at all. Okay, fine. Over the years I learned that there is a lot that the photographer also brings. But at that point in time, I was like, I don't want to be this kind of an author where somebody tells me what to do and then I'm simply like, photocopier types. So I was drawn towards news photography purely because there was some element of freedom of thought that I could exercise. So from, hanging out with this guy to being employed at Indian Express, after I didn't really finish my contract at Express, but I moved over to Hindustan Times, 3 years there. My friend had come over yesterday and I was showing her my photographs of Indian Express and the first year at Hindustan Times. And there is this dramatic shift that happens, which it's very evident. It's purely because the environment at Hindustan Times was very competitive, extremely politically charged. Like one guy is trying to pull down the other guy, is trying to pull down the other guy. So I think that played a huge impact in the way I started approaching situations also. And there's again a remarkable shift in 2008 when I went from a paper to a magazine. Yeah, I think once I 2015 I got done with the whole thing, and now I'm freelance. And
there was no educational qualification way to get into photojournalism.
I mean, there was, but it going to ICP etc. was out of range for most of us. And also, given the fact that photography hobby है, तो काफ़ी सारे families को समझ में नहीं आता है कि हम 20-30 लाख का लोन उठा के तुझे वहाँ भेजें पढ़ने के लिए. And what if that is not recovered enough? It's like with doctors, they put in a lot of money into their education, and the starting salary I'm seeing now a lot of my younger doctor friends who have probably just done their MBBS or masters or whatever, apna starting salary was 3,500 rupees, no qualification, nothing, etc. Right? So education option was there, but again, as I said, it was out of range for a lot of us. It still is.
Do you think it makes a very big difference in the way you approach it?
See, a lot of things that you learn from experience maybe say you're in a classroom where some guy has experienced it before, as your purpose is right now that if I narrate something and if somebody picks up something out of it, that is uh, fantastic. Second thing is you're basically paying to tap into a network, and that network really can, if you harness it well, it can keep you afloat for a long time. I've seen many people who've been through the international schools but have not made a success out of it, because maybe their personality, maybe the fact that they are no longer aligned with that kind of work. They've branched out into different things. So it took them that experience to realize that, listen, boss, I'm not cut out for this. I need something else. It was a very expensive detour. So, but it's okay. If you have it, like a number of times people write to me saying that, I want to learn photography. मेरे को इंडिया में सीखने का है. I'm like, भाई तेरे पास पैसा है ना, तो तू निकल. Don't bother. Don't do this to yourself. Because I'm 100% sure that there is a lot of value to what they're teaching also. No, evolution did not happen because of one thing. Evolution happened because of many factors, and also the thing that there is this obsession with sadness and grief when it comes to news. Like a number of photographs that I've taken, I don't really necessarily feel that if I were to take them now, I wouldn't amplify that. I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't bother approaching that situation that way, which you don't understand back then, because there's a lot of that drive, that whole energy of the newsroom kind of makes you think that way. Yeah, okay, your work environment, your boss, your mentor, the kind of, are they giving you that kind of elbow room? Second thing is how you're brought up. What are you seeing as a child? What are the things that you are attracted to? Like in my case, we used to watch, मतलब वो दूरदर्शन था, तो उसमें सैटरडे संडे को मूवीज आती थी खाली. ऐसा नहीं था अभी कैसा यू वांट टू वॉच अ मूवी 3 बजे दोपहर रात को तुम मूवी देख सकते हो ना. पहले ऐसा नहीं था. तो सब वेट करते थे कि अभी 5 बजे आज ये मूवी सैटरडे को आने वाली है, वो देखने वाले हैं. तो ज़्यादा जो स्टेज पे व्हेन आई वाज ग्रोइंग अप, वो स्टेज पे वी हैड अ लॉट ऑफ ऋषिकेश मुखर्जी फिल्म्स. वी हैड अ लॉट ऑफ strange obscure arty cinema used to be seen, especially in the night. दूसरा, my mother and my sister, they would read all kinds of short stories, so they had this obsession with short stories, and वो मैं पढ़ता था. My father used to read the newspaper. So the influences that are around you and the way you've grown up, वो nature nurture whatever मिलके, and anybody who says कि they have stuck to one kind of image making, और मैं यहाँ पे इंस्पायर होके ऐसा हूँ, वो आप you are quickly heading towards rust. It's no point. I mean, like recently David Allen Harvey got into the shit of things, but one of the most fantastic things that he has ever told me, I don't know if others in that classroom were listening, was every year I throw my portfolio out. He doesn't do that. Nobody does that. But it's a great practice for yourself. It's a great practice to, kind of, चल ठीक है अभी हो गया ना, साल भर में एक खींच लिया, अभी साइड में रखो, let's start thinking afresh. So I think that's what in these little things kind of allow you to at least work towards having a perspective. Baki, it's a different issue that a large number of the photos that were taken, not just by me, by many photographers, especially in newspapers and magazines, they are unpublished. They are in some archival black hole, which you will never see, you will never come to know. In fact, I'm sure that most of them don't even know that they've abandoned these.
So do you think it's a little brutal in that way that you don't get to see your images, or you don't
get to see your images? Matlab, the whole point of working for a newspaper or a magazine is you get to. It's an ego thing also, right? You see your name, a photograph is published. कहीं पे सरकार गिरती है, कहीं पे किसी को donation आता है, कहीं पे क्या होता है. You see these things happen, right? And when you take certain photographs and nothing happens, then you're like, you may not think of it openly, you may not even be aware of it, but somewhere in your subconscious, questions are happening that why am I doing this? Like, what is the point? And then you start, like, I've seen a lot of these things happen to my peers, my colleagues, where they get disillusioned, cynical, etc. मैं कर क्यों रहा हूँ. So at those junctures, to have a goal कि यार 10 साल के बाद में पेंगुइन हो, रैंडम हाउस, पता नहीं कोई भी पब्लिशर आए नहीं आए, मैं तो कुछ छोड़ के जाऊँ. Having that approach really kind of keeps you tied down, keeps your brain intact. Otherwise, it's very easy to go down that cynical slope. There's no recovery after that.
The first time मैंने ये photo देखा था were your 2611 images. I think in Open, the images of the other journalists who were huddled next to the divider. There was a
वो एक ही फोटो चाहिए.
एक फोटो था.
बस एक.
And for a lot of, like, I was trying to understand 2611 ka imagery, and a lot of them were Taj, a lot of them were destruction, a lot of them was bad. But reading about that one photo, I saw what other people in and around it, the imagery that was trying to happen from that place was very serious. And now, years later, the compilation is slightly different for you. So, can you please elaborate on that?
2611 was not an assignment for me. I was hanging out with my friend, and this is that old school. This is what the old school teaches you, that if something is happening, by assignment हो ना हो, तुम पहुँच जाओ, and maybe somebody will require an image out of it, and maybe you may not get published, but तुम्हारा आर्काइव में होगी, तुम 10 साल के बाद उसका कुछ कर सकते हो, 20 साल के बाद. तो ये जो अपना इनिशिएटिव लेने का था, ये माय बॉस एट HT was Shamitra Ghosh was very this thing about it. So I had left HT. Mr. Ghosh had moved on, I have moved on, there is nobody in HT, as in there were other people in HT, but so I was part of a magazine that didn't have a name, and they were discussing at that point in time whether we should be called Talk or Open. And so when this thing happened, my first reaction was जाके देखते हैं क्या है. सबने बोला गैंग वॉर हो रहा है, गोलियाँ चल रही है, ऐसा हो रहा है. मैं कहा मैंने तो कभी गैंग वॉर नहीं देखा, देख लेते हैं इस बहाने. तो that night my then editor called me at like 1:32 in the night saying 2611 हो गया है, हम सोच रहे हैं कि हम डमी इशू बनाएंगे, दिस वे वी कैन चेक अपना रिस्पॉन्स टाइम. आज से तुम बनाओगे करोगे कब, मैं ऑलरेडी हूँ इधर, मेरा काम शुरू हो चुका है, तुम बनाओ नहीं बनाओ मेरे को नहीं फ़र्क पड़ता. तो he said, oh very good, I am sending across some other support like photographers. And I was like they sent one guy who I like, and my former photo editor was complete absolutely incompetent guy. I don't know how he managed to reach that stage, but he was there. And the thing is that because these two suddenly came in the morning and they were trying to look at the regular things, because they've been parachuted, right? They have not been through the night that I have been through. So I was like, I have more freedom now to see beyond what, they'll take care of the regular stuff. I will look at other things, because that's what I was doing through the night. Through the night, I had no deadline, no publication, no client, no boss, nothing. So I was like, I'm free to shoot the way I want. And what more can you ask for? And you're also getting a monthly salary for it. So that little freedom that you get, it entirely depends on how much elbow room can you manage for yourself. And I had several factors in my advantage, so I did it. Initially, I was like, I felt very bad that in spite of being almost outside the station, I couldn't get the kind of images that Sabi got and other people got. But take care, these are also larger pieces of the puzzle, and That's where I think journalism, like a lot of photojournalism in India, tends to screw its head up. Is like, अरे तेरे पास वो नहीं है, लेकिन तेरे पास वो नहीं है. Fucker, think 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. Are you only going to look at that? Are you only going to remember that? What is the core idea? Do you want to tell a story in its multiple ways, with multiple characters, or is it just, हाँ भाई, okay, I have taken this direction, so I'm only going to look at these kind of images. The fact that I was now going into a space where I had 1 week's time to produce work, a magazine with a weekly cycle, तो थोड़ा relax हो जाता. So you start, you start pacing yourself that way. Over the years, I've seen documentaries, I've seen films, we've seen National Geographic, etc., all these magazines, and how there is one opening image, there are these supporting images, etc., that they lay out. A number of times those supporting images are very, very strong, very central to the story, very far, but for whatever reason they are not really the double spread and things like that. So when I was shooting 2611 for those 2-3 nights, I was thinking that, in my head I was thinking layouts. That's another thing that photographers should, I think they do now, but back then my colleagues would never do that. They would feel ashamed to go to the scanners and see how the only concern was photo crop नहीं होना चाहिए, photo ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए. But I was like, कहाँ जा रहा है? फोल्ड पे जा रहा है तो तुम्हें दूसरी तस्वीर दे दो. अगर कॉर्नर में जा रहा है तो you give an image of that sort. So the fact that they were not interested allowed me to take interest in it, and that again influences how you photograph. And I think thinking about design a number of times when you take photos is very liberating. People say, अरे इतना सब सोच के कैसे काम करेगा? But एक बार आदत पड़ जाती है ना, तो it's great.
तो internalize करने वाली बात.
हाँ.
So when did you first meet Rajan Verma?
When I first met Rajan Verma, I actually don't remember how I came to know about this, but there is a certain way of information gathering which was told to me by Srinivas, that when they were freelancing, they used to look at the engagements column of vernacular newspapers. You're working with the English newspapers, so you will look at the engagements column, small announcements in, like, अच्छा इधर 2,500 लीटर दूध फट गया types, so they'll be like, अच्छा फटेगा तो उसका करोगे क्या? You will drain it out, or you will do something with it. So these little things they would go and look for. So you take a small snippet and you expand on it. A number of international stories are also born in that same manner. You read something somewhere and then it balloons. I think I read something about this one guy who was like, I want to make this film and everything. And then through, in whatever, some Guma Phira I made contacts. I spoke to the director, and because everybody wanted the attention. This film was made to get attention. It was not made for aesthetics or whatever. So I met him. I think they said meet us the day we are doing the press conference, which was bizarre because the Muhurat shot or whatever was it had him doing a lot of things, walking with a gun, this, that, whatever. But the main shot was Kasab being hung. Now I don't have that photograph because being the only photographer for this magazine, I had about 4 assignments that day. So I shot a little bit of that press conference and I made my contact with him and I went. And I was like, I can't stay for this. So then slowly he started opening up. He's like the funny bit was that he was making counterfeit deodorants. That's his business. I don't know what he does now. So I kept thinking, मेरा भाई ब्रूट का जो बॉटल खरीदता है नासिक में शायद यही बनाता होगा. There was a stage where Brute was the perfume of they weren't very forthcoming with information because this was obviously a lot of black money at play. And अच्छा ये नहीं है तो ये कर दो, ये जुगाड़ कर दो. You see little bits of filmmaking which is best put in words. You realize that visually it's forced humor. Like when I actually submitted the images, I realized that a lot of it is trying to be funny and trying to be humorous when it's not. It's actually nowhere near humorous. It's just a plain document of a situation where, okay, 4 guys are running around, but only 3 of them have a gun. Why? Because the third, fourth, the gun didn't come or something. So something has happened. Now, so text-wise, the story made more sense. And then they had a writer who teamed up with me because at that point in time I didn't have the confidence to pull it off. So yeah, he's not a guy I would like to be in touch with for long.
So how did you come to like put together a 2611 assignment like you have today that combines both the real event and this? And what was going on in your mind in composing this?
So it's basically the fact that a large number of those 2611 images are unpublished. Like apart from my website, you don't get to see it more or less anywhere. So I was like, okay, I went through this one experience in November, and then in December I was on the set of the same thing. So I felt disoriented. So let me see if I can bring out that disorientation. And my original purpose was to actually make a 20-30 page zine with it. But that time I was like doing the book. So I was like, अभी ये भी करेगा, वो भी करेगा, फिर बाद में कुछ भी नहीं होएगा. तो इससे अच्छा एक कर लेते हैं, उसके बाद में we will see. Also, a lot of my news photographer friends were like, काय के लिए? Why you have to merge these things? Sanctity maintain करो and all that bullshit. क्या sanctity maintain करने का? किसी इंसानों ने खुद नहीं sanctity maintain किया as a storyteller. In fact, I'm bringing in a lot more by trying to make this mishmash. So पता नहीं, if I can at some point in time, I would actually like to put it in print format, because some years later I saw one of those cheap comics that you get, not exactly Chacha Chaudhary grade. Chacha Chaudhary is like far better, great narratives, but some comic I saw which had the 2611 theme, uber patriotic Hindi dialogues and everything. I was like, ये रखते हैं, आगे जाके कभी कुछ बनाएंगे ना तो इसका narrative structure वहाँ पे काम आ सकता है.
It's really great that you talk about comics and like other influences, because usually, especially a budding photographer, उनको influence के लिए पूछते हो तो वो और 4 या 10 photographer के नाम बोलते हैं और उनके favorite photos. रघु
राय, रघुवीर सिंह, स्टीव मैककरी, and they're all men. Problem वहाँ आ जाता है.
बहुत सारा personal perspective है. So for example, afterlife political posters.
बकवास फोटोज है वो.
नहीं, but वो
कोई भी एंगल से वो ढंग का फोटोज है नहीं. मतलब there is no composition in it, there is no this thing. That's because those posters are like that. Those posters don't have any iota of design. I mean, if an anthropologist or design person were to actually sit and study those posters, yes, 100 posters of those put together is a design in itself. Like there is a layout to it, there is some kind of katakuti that they do. But I was like, how can I shoot this in nice light, proper aperture, and like I have to basically shoot it the way it is made. So yeah, I mean, you stay true to it in some way.
It's like it is not a photo story. It is more irony showing in the way that you've shot plus what you have shot.
But it reaches a point only. Matlab you people will only sleep on it, open shops on it, use it as a this thing, etc. After a point, it reached optimum this thing कि इसके आगे मतलब अभी मैं 2013 से ये चीज़ें ढूंढ रहा हूँ और बार बार मुझे सिर्फ रिपीट से मिल जाते हैं. कि किसी ने उसके ऊपर भिंडी बेच रहा है, कोई उसके ऊपर सो रहा है, कोई उसके ऊपर मच्छी बिछा कर, वो रिपीट हो रहा है बार बार। तो उसको फिर क्या करूँ मैं अभी उसका, तो उसको जस्ट लाइक वन ऑफ दोज पोस्टर्स छोड़ दिया।
So can you talk about enforcing like a personal perspective into your work?
Actually, these are very, very simple ideas. So I don't really find anything like outlandish in talking about them also. There are countless workshops that will tell you, that will talk about how to compose, etc., etc. And nobody will tell you what to leave out. Nobody will tell you that what you leave out is literally defining what your image, like a number of things that you keep out of the frame kind of make what's inside of it. I basically followed that. I was like, okay, these are things I don't want to do. Not because I'm uncomfortable. I'm sure we can all pull off a photograph where a man and a woman are having sex with each other. But I was like, ये फोटो का पॉइंट क्या है टाइप से. If you just ask yourself a number of times that if I as a reader were to look at a photograph of anything excessively dramatic or anything like, as I said, a man and woman having sex together, मेरे को उसमें नया क्या, मतलब मैं क्या सीख रहा हूँ. I've also had sexual relationships with women. So what is new that I'm seeing? I'm seeing an impoverished person, most probably brown or black bodies, a man in a powerful position, a transaction of money, various other mental things are not there in that photo. As a viewer, मेरे को क्या मिल रहा है उसमें से? कुछ नहीं. I'm just purely getting titillated. कि हाँ okay, I'm looking, and knowing Indians, मैगजीन में ऐसी फोटो आ गई तो बाथरूम में जाके देखेगा या चुपके ऐसा साइड में बैठ के देखेगा, वो घर में आपने देखेगा भी नहीं. I remember 9th standard में I was looking at Cosmopolitan. My sister used to subscribe and get it and everything. And I think the younger one said, she yelled across from the kitchen, saying, oh, he's looking at Cosmopolitan. And the other sister was like, what's the big deal? But then these are same people who will be the exact opposite on different days. So maybe on that day I was like, okay, ठीक है, मेरे को ये फोटो का कोई काम नहीं है, और इससे राइटर कह रहा है कि this woman is trying to pull these women out of the brothels and what not. तो why waste energies on that? And also, honestly, there were so many things happening. Like as an intern in Indian Express, I went to Kamatipura with the load of Mary Ellen Mark. That time we knew, अच्छा उसने ऐसा काम किया है उस जनरेशन में उस तरीके से, तो my immediate environment of colleagues was also completely enamored कि क्या काम है क्या काम है. So as a new entrant, I had that burden. Slowly अपना भी दिमाग रहता है, अपना भी एजुकेशन रहता है. If you are really interested in your own growth, you will fall back on those things also. So हम अबैंडन कर दिए उसको और जान नहीं करना. और मेरा दोस्त अभी एक नाटक करता था, he used to photograph in cine style mode, excessively grey करके. चलो ये भी ट्राई करते हैं, लेट्स सी. all these pink walls, blue colors, etc. उसको हटा ही देते हैं पूरी तरीके से, क्या ज़रूरत है करने. एंड लग्जरी था कि मैगजीन को एक सेट ऑफ इमेजेस चाहिए सोबर टाइप की, रिलेटेड टू द स्टोरी, थोड़ा बहुत ग्रेड ऐसा वैसा, वो एक बैलेंस रहता है. इट्स लाइक योर बॉलीवुड फार्मूला. तो वो हो गया, उसके बाद मैं अपना कर ली. एंड दैट इज, आई थिंक, द बेस्ट थिंग यू कैन डू ऑन एनी असाइनमेंट फॉर योर सेल्फ इज you get done with your safety shots. I read this on photo.net many years ago in relation to a connection with sports photography. You're at a match, finish your safety shots. You will get your safety shots dime a dozen at any sporting encounter. But keep an eye out for the match turner, that crazy, sudden burst of action that happens, or any experimentation, because panning was a big thing with sports right back then. But it depends on where you apply these things.
I want to talk about sensitivity in photojournalism.
It's a natural extension. You don't have to work hard after a point. If it's as you said, if it's internalized, then you don't have to work hard towards it.
So a lot of people have been recently accused of either white gaze or parachuting or anything like that.
See, white gaze also has two ways to look at it. If I am born and brought up in India and if I am suddenly thrown into the US to shoot something, I will have some of my bias that is going to come through. Till last year, till 2 years ago, I was also like, oh, white gaze, what is this or something. बट यार अब जिसकी जो एजुकेशन है, जिसका जो हिसाब से वो पैदा हुआ है, उसको आप सडनली उठा के बोलोगे कि तुम्हारे पास 2 महीने हैं, प्रोड्यूस करो, हाई प्रेशर सिचुएशन है, तो वो दैट पर्सन इज गोइंग टू डू व्हाट दे आर गोइंग टू डू. इट इज़ द जॉब ऑफ द एज आई सेड कि बाबा मेरे व्यूअर को फॉर्निकेशन फोटो से क्या मिलने वाला है. तो इट इज़ द जॉब ऑफ द फोटो एडिटर टू से कि भाई ठीक है, or the editor to say कि let's let's get somebody who has something. Plus also it's a till a lot of outside photographers didn't come to India, हम हिले नहीं ना. जब उन्होंने आके हमारी बजाई तब हम हिले, तब हमने सोचा कि हमको ऐसे करना चाहिए. अच्छा फ्लड में वो हम साइड में खड़े रह के टेलीफोटो से शूट करेंगे. That fucker will go with a wide angle and shoot. Yeah, he'll be like, okay, I'll sit in this much. It's a different thing. He's got the financial backing for it. I don't. But end of the day, that photograph is very superior, and it's really making you sit up when you see that guy or whatever Steve McCurry's photos. For all that you ridicule, for all that you say, the photograph is better than all of us at certain junctures, not all the time.
How do you deal with mental health as a photojournalist? How have, if any of these assignments have affected you, and how have you dealt with them?
They have 100% affected me. Every assignment affects you, whether it's good or bad. A good assignment lifts you up. A bad assignment, by bad in the sense that if you're witnessing something bad. But numerous incidents of I'm amazed as to how conflict photographers must be dealing with their mental health. But 2015 was a particularly bad year because of personal relationship collapse, this collapse, that collapse, and then midst of all they say, oh, go to Nepal and shoot the earthquake and everything. And that was, I think, that is where decision making, I saw a flawed decision can really fuck up an assignment. The earthquake happened at around 11:30 or 12 or something of that sort. I'm forgetting the time now, but somewhere in the middle of the day, right? And at that point in time, natural instinct, let's find out कौन कैसे जा रहा है type, अपने बगल में ही है. So I called up my superiors, like, boss, there is an 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, some flight is going, Jet Airways, मैं चले जाता हूँ यार. नहीं कुछ नहीं, सब होते रहता है, we'll see for a day. Okay, we'll see for a day. I was pissed. I was thinking, I wish I wouldn't have called. I would have just left. That's again risky. You could lose your job for that. So that whole day got wasted. The next day got wasted. It was a Sunday. Sunday night, I get an email and a call saying that you have to go to Vidarbh to photograph something to do with farmer suicides. So I've switched off from that. I'm in that mode. I have to go there. So one small bag, 40 degrees here. So what do you expect? One small bag, one shirt, this, that, etc. Basic ready करके सुबह 7 बजे I'm at the airport. I'm getting to the bus and this idiot calls me, is saying छोड़ दो, उधर काठमांडू जाओ. ऐसे कैसे होएगा ऐसे में? You have basically thrown away an advantage. You're throwing me now in the deep end. You're putting me in a high pressure zone. So I said, how am I going to manage this? Runway is short. I won't be able to reach today in any ways. And that, on Sunday, one friend had told me that, and some army flight was going with supplies, etc., and he could have helped or pata nahi, who knows whether that would have worked out or not. But that option was also exhausted. So this guy puts me in this extreme situation, and then I was like, what do? I board the Nagpur flight. I reach Nagpur. I'm making calls. मेरे को लैपटॉप चाहिए, मेरे को ये चाहिए. मैं आई कॉल्ड अप निकॉन सिंह, मेरे पास बैटरीज नहीं है, मैं चार्जर 2 दिन का असाइनमेंट के लिए मैं क्या चार्जर लेके जाऊँगा. तो they like, okay, we'll arrange in Calcutta. Then one guy said, okay, I'll send sweaters in Calcutta. ऐसा वैसा सब अरेंज करके रात को I'm in Calcutta. Morning I'm supposed, we have booked a flight to Kathmandu saying that I will कैसे ना कैसे पहुँच जाएंगे. This is now Tuesday night I have reached Kathmandu after losing technically 4 full days. And coupled with all the things that have happened a week before that, at home, with the ex-girlfriend, with friends, with this, with that, whatever, then we pushed into this zone. I was like, this is too much. This is absolutely too much. And the absolute lowest point was that I somehow managed to find a hotel with internet. I somehow managed to do all these things, get money, do the assignment, go to one of the worst affected districts, but pure luck. Okay, absolutely pure luck. And then I get to hear that we're not going to use your photograph on the cover. They use some rotten agency photograph, and I was like, oh, this is too much. This is too much to take. So the first thing I did when I came back, I called up a friend, said I need to go and visit a council. Because these guys are not going to change. I can't do anything to them. And I don't know what kind of load I'm carrying with myself. So I went for those 8, 9, 10 sessions. I spoke to a person who is neutral to our profession, who has very little idea. And then I built all this to my company only. Because I was like, you pay for it because you have put me in this position. But I think that was one of the best things I did for myself. And after that, at every press club gathering, I'm not a member of the press club, but I have been telling my colleagues that please, we must have these things. Not just this, a financial advisor, a legal advisor, a counselor, a child therapist or something like that. Because you don't know what you're taking on. And you're taking it on, you're being very macho by not talking about it. Like I remember one photographer came completely beaten and bruised from an assignment, and the first thing this boss asked is, ठीक है, no problem, पहले फोटो फाइल कर दो. आ गया अरे यार ये तो टू मच है यार. मतलब you first, ठीक है, 5 मिनट तो दो उसको. कहाँ जाने वाला तुम्हारा पेपर. So I would say that at any point in time, anybody who's considering to be in this profession, you must have नहीं है तो build करो. Build a support system. Talk to people. And see a counselor if you have to. Indians have to start talking about mental health openly. It's like, why do we have this shame attached to it?
No, I think this is a wonderful answer.
And it really affects the way you work in the organization. Like some guy will be like, "Arey, tu hak kya hai assignment pe? You're not good." Then you're feeling shit for the next whole month. Then you start with all this politics and whatnot. It's a lose-lose situation.
The press room environment is as politically charged as the politics
Parliament.
we shoot. Yeah.
It's as bad as Parliament.
As the politics we shoot. So, अगर उधर का तो I cannot talk about mental health of the politics, but if this affects your mental health, then तुम्हारा objectivity वाला angle कितना टाइम तक?
Objectivity को तो आप साइड में रख दो, because वो अभी 15 साल के बाद में ये लगता है कि objectivity, आपने 30% objectivity approach कर ली तो बहुत बड़ी बात है. तो this objectivity तो for humans it's not possible at all. Everything is subjective. To what extent is it subjective is what matters, and to what extent that whole balancing act you have to do on a daily basis.
So personal bias हर चीज में
ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता. मतलब I'm happy to be proven wrong on this, that there is no personal bias in something. If there is something good, if somebody has achieved 100% objectivity, Fantastic, good for you. Like I remember, there are numerous photographs of Bhaiya Lal Bhutmange. Numerous photographs of him. His family was massacred in Kerala. But each photographer has approached his photograph differently. Each photograph has, each writer has, picked out a little. It's a स्टोरी बाय नेचर इज ऑब्जेक्टिव. इसके साथ में ऐसा हुआ, ये लोन सर्वाइवर है, ये लोन विटनेस है, ये कास्ट सिस्टम, ये दिस, ये दैट, ये व्हाटएवर. आप 10 फोटो साथ में रख लो. यू कांट से दैट दीज आर ऑब्जेक्टिव फोटोग्राफ्स. में है कहीं ना कहीं बायस. लाइक व्हेन आई सॉ हिम सिटिंग इन फ्रंट ऑफ मी इन हिज ओन हाउस फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम आफ्टर द इंसिडेंट, एंड various things happen to you, and various things that happen to you influence the way you are going to depict this man. So what objectivity are we talking about really?
Do you think your humor as a coping mechanism comes from this?
Yeah, absolutely. Humor is generally, what is it? You cloak it, you sugarcoat a situation for, maybe consumption or something. There is pure humor which is just funny, but I don't know. I think it's the best way to say so many things. It's the I don't know how to put it actually. There's a lot that humor can do. Of course, it trivializes also at times, but I don't know. I'm more inclined to forget like very, very tragic photographs. But if I see something with a slight sarcastic, slightly you also can see like, oh, this guy is like trying to be like, tongue in cheek, yeah, kuch kar raha hai types. It's not very straightforward.
Can you talk about the high images?
These are, again, I feel that I've been lazy and I have not pushed myself to look for too many humorous photos in all these years. But these are just some of those. And there is one kind of humor that the classic street photographers do, where there's a lot of elements come together. There'll be like some chicken's eye on somebody's face and somebody's leg with something, etc. That is how can I say? That's a form-oriented humor. But general simple humor, like I had to go for this one assignment to Kathmandu many years ago, 2008 or 9, and we missed the flight. Something. So lots of unnis happened. But there was these two men who, devout Muslims who wanted to pray. So they were praying in the direction of Mecca. They all have to pray in that direction, right? In the direction of Mecca is a Carlsberg poster. So it's hilarious. It's hilarious on the surface, but it also says so much about urban design, customs, adherence to those, etc. and everything. So you look at that photograph, at least I look at that photograph, I'm like, oh, it's so funny at first, but then after that, oh, why is there no prayer space for people? Why are they not included in, why is human behavior not included in a lot of urban design? Although they keep saying human behavior, they keep talking about it. Like once I had seen, just when this Vadala flyover, whatever, that freeway was started, a family parked their wagoner, laid out mats and started praying. And it was very strange that this expressway has just been constructed, there's not a single car, they're all by themselves, and you know the landscape, you know that place, like there are these strange tall buildings and everything. I was like एक छोटा बना देते थे, like a rest house or a pit stop or something, where if they don't want to pray, at least some, women can go and sit, somebody can do something. Yeah, I think humor is born out of trying to say these things. So, and it's sorely missing in our journalism. Yeah. It's sorely missing in our practice. We bastardize so many of these photos as documentaries, street, etc. I think all these things can overlap, and yeah,
I
I think
remember-
it's not there in our scene at all.
And I remember the very first image with which I was introduced to your book. I think, on your old Instagram, long time back. And I remember the distinct impact that it had on me, because I love the image as a standalone until I read the caption, and it completely changed everything for me. It's a man running into the beach behind a crow.
Okay.
So I was like, hey, that's a good looking shot, and this and that. And then I read the caption, drunk man chases crow into the sea in Kerala.
But I didn't go with that thing. I was at the beach and I shot. And then, now that's the thing, like I didn't have this in my head. And since you spoke about humor and looking, just I think 2-3 weeks ago, Sunday morning, there were around 200-300 notifications on Instagram. I was like, suddenly कुछ तो viral हो गया यार, ऐसे कैसे? And there was unending abuse from all sorts of bots and right-wing trolls about that Hanuman and Shiva urinating photo. The thing is, again, it's a matter of looking. As Indians, we are not trained to look at photographs as something. It's like jagah khali ek photo टांग दो types, one of those things, and hobby. So you have never really sat, looked, peeled off certain layers and said कि हो क्या रहा है, मतलब कैक्टस के सामने ये दो इंसान लोग ऐसे वेशभूषा में कर क्या रहे हैं और क्यों कर रहे हैं. Okay, so when you, okay, my caption was also misleading, because then as somebody who has started playing with words and images, I was like, oh, क्या फर्क पड़ता है यार, मतलब my caption actually proves the entire outburst right. Like it's almost like I foresaw it कि यही होने वाला है अभी थोड़े दिन में, रुको. So all these people, mother, father, तेरा ऐसा कर दूंगा, तेरा ये कर दूंगा, तेरे पे केस कर दूंगा, तेरे पे वो कर दूंगा, this, that, it's a balloon. It's like I have screenshots of it all. I was like, someday I want to use this. The day I have like this big mammoth show or something, or like a book, I will have no captions for this image. I will just have this, so that you're forced to think as to what's happening. It's one army guy who started a paragliding school. Just before the end of season for paragliding, this particular school does like a fancy dress competition where you get dressed up in whatever character you want and you fly. Either you do a flight, you don't do a flight, do the barbecue, eat, relax, whatever around Pavna and just chill, okay? It's end of season. The worst thing to happen to anybody who has to take a flight is a nature's call in the air. So they're just honoring that. They're just taking a piss before they're about to fly. And they're humans. And as somebody, in the comments said, भाई इंसान मुतेगा नहीं तो क्या करेगा? So the grief that people have with that photograph is, how dare you don't make, तू मुसलमान का मजाक क्यों नहीं उड़ा? They don't have a problem कि उसमें हो क्या रहा है. तू गांडू मुसलमान का मजाक क्यों नहीं उड़ाया? तो मैं तो उसका भी मजाक उड़ाया. और तुझे लगता है कि मैं मजाक उड़ा रहा हूँ, मैं किसी का मजाक नहीं उड़ा रहा हूँ. I am showing you something that you should be like concerned. Like there is another photograph of this Santa Claus guy taking a piss in the loo, right? It's very funny on the surface, but that guy told me, यार मैं 12 घंटे एक जगह पे खड़े रहता हूँ, whatever that हो करते घंटी बजाते. I only get 15-20 minutes to take a piss break and socialize with people without my mask, without my this thing. So I was like, you're not trained to look beyond what you're seeing, and that shows how you may be interacting with people in your life. That shows how you treat women in your house. That shows what kind of friendships you have. And all this shit shows in the people you vote for. So, it's a large, long loop if you actually look at it.
and a little bit about the Red Cat.
I've tried a number of times to be, like have gallery representation or be part of some photo festival or be whatever. I realized very early on कि maybe I'm not built that way. I'm not looking at things that way. So it's a futile thing to chase after it. What is more important is, chalo theek hai, you developed a certain kind of skill set, let's expand on it, let's try to do something with it. Actually, the crucial turning point was that when we were doing this magazine, Talk and Open, we used to have these fancy lunches, उसका काम नहीं था ना, magazines launch नहीं हुआ था, तो हम जाते थे अच्छी अच्छी जगहों पे, बॉस हमारे पे करते थे, और उसमें I think there were 6 writers, himself and me. I was the only photographer there. So our editor was releasing a book, much talked about, etc. And he went on to do 2 more books after that. Again, very much talked about and very whatever famous. So this lunch was in honor of that. So I see 6 potential books on this table. I was like, मैं मतलब भूल गया क्या, मैं भी हूँ इधर टाइप्स, मेरा भी आ सकता है, ऐसा डोंट काउंट मी आउट. तो बहुत बुरा लगा, मैं बोला यार ये तो है, how dare you talk like this. And it shows what you think of photographers. It shows, as I said before, what you think of photography, what you think of photographers, how you read it, how you see it. So that day I decided कि I will do something. And how I do it, whether I do it with a publisher or non-publisher or whatever, we get to that. Then I think 2014-15, which that whole turning point, and the fact that I started shooting a lot with the phone. So the entire book is shot with the phone. There are no images where I had excessive control. I didn't even tone them to that extent. Max a little bit of touch-ups I did. I thought that this is the easiest thing for me to do a book on the city, because many books have happened on the city. Many photographers, landscape, journalistic, etc., travel photographers have done it. I felt that maybe with the phone, maybe with the way I have lived, maybe the fact, my family history, how we went from a very tiny space to, we've never had an apartment in our name for, like my father never had any apartment in his name since partition. So all these little journeys, how can they, all these little histories are actually what make the larger picture. So I'm going to focus on that. I don't want to do this Marine Drive, Gateway of India, whatever. You have Google Images for that. And there are tons of pre-wedding shoots that happen which show you all this also, So I was like, okay, I'm going to focus on what are the things that, are invoked within me. And then, once I had a list of things that I will not do, my list of things of what I will include, what I will talk about, automatically refined by itself. The journey to self-publish physically was extremely tough, extremely challenging. There's not a day when you think why are you doing it and how expensive it is. And I keep saying this again and again, if I had the kind of support that I was promised by certain people, I wouldn't have priced this book beyond $500. I would have taken the law, like that kind of support would have helped me absorb a certain amount of cost on myself, because there are lots of very good books that are published, good photo books that are published about, which talk a lot about interpersonal relationships, cities, urban spaces, etc. But they're out of reach for a lot of people. They cater to you and me. We will buy these books, we will get excited. It's like your circle, So what's the point of that? Ideally, there should be, if I may say, some sort of Chetan Bhagatification of the photo book scene, They should be available for $100, $200, $300, whatever, cheap printing. How you do it, infrastructurally, there should be these systems in place where you can achieve it. If it's a book about somebody who's dealing with a cancer patient, if it's a book where it's about a divorce or something of that sort. I think these books should be like mass printed, available at mass scales. That writer, that photographer should be like, you know, जितना भी support उसको मिल सके institutionally मिलना चाहिए. It shouldn't be reduced to some art object. Okay, this tragedy is so beautiful to look at. Let me frame it and let me do this. And it's a 3,500 rupee book. Oh God, इसको कपड़े से लपेट के रखो. अबे क्या है मतलब? So I find it to be counterproductive. Somebody else may not, because there are you can't deny personal aspiration to someone. But I guess if I ever do a next one, I will ensure that from whatever I have learned in this process, I will ensure that I manage the workings in such a way that more people should have my book. More people should read, more people should have feedback. And that, like putting this together took 4 years. Putting something else together may take time. If more people see it, more people have access to it, who knows, yeah, all these photographers sitting with all these unpublished archives, they could do something with their work.
What's your favorite story in that?
It changes with time. And I think that's the best approach to have. Like, if you were to ask me who's my favorite photographer, I don't know. It changes with time. It should ideally change with time. Nobody should be in that space कि भैया ये पकड़ लिया. But I think on some days I'm very driven to Akash's story about his because that again is a photograph that I had to challenge myself and say, this is a man who I met at a very sad time in his life. He looked at me and he was grief personified, मतलब वो दिख ही रहा था ऐसा. But जब हम बात कर रहे हैं, जब हम देख रहे हैं, do you see that okay, there are many facets. I don't want anybody to look at this book 10 years later, 15 years later, how much of it survives, and see that, oh, Akka, and if they know him, they'll be like, oh, this is such a sad photograph of him. My purpose was not to make him smile or laugh or whatever, which goes against the audience. I was like, okay, how am I going to convey the fact that there are several dimensions to this person, just like any of us, but give the hint of a certain dark side, which that little window does with that, silhouetted person, etc. and everything. And I was like, when I did that, I was like, oh, I put little bit of whatever I know to good use, and so sometimes I'm very attracted to that. Sometimes the thing is that a lot of people brought in new ideas to it. There's this one photograph of that child in the sari. Okay, I don't have a formal art education, but somebody showed me different kinds of biblical paintings where there are rays of light and like we've seen in Hindi cinema, ऊपर से light आता है and the child is lifted in the air and everything. And God light and all those things are happening and like elevation अपने आप levitation हो रहा है. So all these things, when people say, अरे यार मैं तो इतना सोचा नहीं था, मैं तो अलग dimension में था, आप मुझे बता रहे हो तो ठीक है, अच्छा लग रहा है. So different days, different images, and that's more or less.
I think the book, apart from your personal perspective and the red cat aspect of it, I love the fact that आपने सारे age groups के लिए बनाया. The simple transparency.
एक गाली है कहीं पे तो.
But I'm sure child can browse through it and not notice that.
Actually, children have had a lot of fun with it. Like when I showed it to the thing is that production-wise, I reduced the scale of paper one day before printing. I was supposed to do this on a classic 130 GSM, 150 GSM paper. But when I was making the layout, and I used to do Xerox copy these things, Xerox copy versions to check. तो वो पतले पेपर की वजह से ना जो images on both sides would kind of overlap. वो मेरे को अच्छा लगा था. तो प्रगति में वो बोल रहे थे आप क्या कर रहे हैं, व्हाट इज दिस यार, नो फोटोग्राफ्स के लिए तो इतना थिक पेपर तो चाहिए, ऐसा क्या नहीं चाहिए यार, लाओ नीचे 90 GSM तक लाओ, 80 तक लाओ, जैसे नहीं द प्रेस विल नॉट बी एबल टू हैंडल इट, we'll do 100, we settled like that. We did a test on 100 GSM and I liked it. And a number of spreads, a number of pictures, you can see the overlap happening. Like here you have the baby in this thing and here this thing. So if you see it against light somewhere, you see like a bit of an overlap again once here. These two merge into a third one altogether. And that's also how memory works, right? You sometimes merge details and things like that. So ये सब फूफा मेरे दिमाग में था and I executed it that way. And the first person to really notice it was a friend's child. And she noticed a different one which was with the stars. She saw this and she was like इधर पीछे से ये like यहाँ पे stars दिख रहे हैं ऐसा and I was like wow. Then somebody's child was like positioning the cat on different pages. The cat is a part of this scene and the cat is essentially a metaphor. But I mean it's a multiple kind of metaphor with multiple kind of person, multiple kind of idea, which you may have a different reading of it, I may have different reading of it. And I think if I had continued with the newspaper approach, firstly I mean never have made a book, but I think abandoning those things helped getting here. Now this has been abandoned fully and maybe something else should. It's necessary to just अभी हो गया खत्म.
Self cleansing.
हाँ.
Self cleansing.
हाँ मतलब like somebody once told me कि you're constantly like promoting your book, yeah, it's getting irritating on this thing, and I was like क्यों नहीं करेगा मैं? मेरा खून निकला, मेरे बाल झड़ गए इस चक्कर में, मेरे पास पैसे नहीं थे, I was doing the most rotten assignments for money, and you're telling me that I shouldn't promote my book because you're feeling like shit. बंद कर बैठ साइड में, मेरे मत देख यार, इसमें क्या है? It's very selfish, no? It's very stupid. Like if I have put in so much into something, I have the absolute right to talk about it. But that also made me realize that okay, at some point in time, I need to also move on from this. Though that person didn't mention that, but that's the learning I took from it. कि अच्छा ठीक है, अभी आगे बढ़ते हैं types.
I would like to ask you about your Sindhi identity and how much, if it makes a difference in your perspective, looking at life, because उसमें से काफी कुछ आपके book में reflect है.
My father's journey affected him. My mother's journey affected her. What they did together affected me. It's very straightforward. And as such, मेरे को नहीं मालूम सिंधी, मतलब मैं किस टाइप का सिंधी हूँ मुझे नहीं मालूम, क्योंकि मेरे को बोलना आता है, लिखना पढ़ना भी थोड़ा बहुत आता है, बट क्या है सिंधी आइडेंटिटी, मतलब व्हाट इज दिस ढोल दैट वी पीटो, दिस इज क्रिश्चियन आइडेंटिटी, दिस इज दिस थिंग, क्या है, कोई 10 कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स है क्या जो फॉलो करना पड़ेगा, ऐसा कुछ. तो आई एम नॉट वेरी comfortable with. I find yes, an identity as a Sindhi should be fluid. You should be allowed to become a Maratha when you want, Hindu when you want, Muslim when you want, whatever. I think that's the beauty of identity, that you are free to kind of go from one to another. Because I don't think there is any set parameter for it. Me and my sister, we've started like a little bit of a catering thing and things like that, and we started it again. It started purely by accident. We just started making sweets because we were comfortable with that. Also, this is something which had like 2-3 ingredients which could be controlled, which could, like, there is a certain standardization that you can bring it to. Then people started asking, why don't you make like Sindhi curry, why don't you make this, why don't you make that, we'll make it. But the feedback is, मेरी माँ ऐसे नहीं बनाती थी, हम नहीं बना पाएंगे तुम्हारी माँ के जैसे, कोई भी नहीं बना पाएगा, तुम खुद नहीं बना पाओगे अपनी माँ के जैसे, यू नो, नानी के जैसा नहीं लगता है, ऐसा नहीं लगता है, हो ही नहीं सकता। तो जब इतनी सी छोटी सी चीज़ की आइडेंटिटी मैच नहीं हो रही है तो एक पूरे इंसान की दूसरे से कैसे मैच कर पाओगे? थोड़ी बहुत तो 19-20 रहेगी ना उसमें। तो वी सॉ दिस इन द फूड थिंग, वी सॉ दिस इन द वे customs happen. Like if I were to do something at my native place, they would say something differently. You know? So when there are so many differences, what is this desire to kind of homogenize into one thing? Okay, this is this, this is that. तो वो मेरे से हुआ नहीं. Thankfully, my father never spoke about his partition, this thing experience. It's obvious that it was tragic. Otherwise, he would have spoken about it. My mother was too young to understand, but I'm sure given a chance she would have managed to express something. तो हमको इस चीज़ से थोड़ा बहुत शील्ड इसलिए भी किया गया कि भैया तुम यू मेक योर ओन थिंग, यू मेक वट एवर यू मेक, एंड बिकॉज Sindhis eventually ended up being so scattered across the world, I haven't come across anybody saying मेरे को I'll pick up a gun and I want Sindh back. Nobody is interested. They're like, oh, US मिल रहा है, चल ना उधर जाते हैं. ये क्या है? What is this shallow goal? Hey, I mean, I'm not saying that it's a shallow goal, but they're like, people are like, ठीक है, you know. Throughout history, humans have migrated for war, for water, for prosperity, for whatever reason. Maybe because I'm not a direct sufferer of it, I have this perspective. Maybe somebody who has actually seen more or heard more will have a different perspective. But so you can say whatever version of Sindhi identity I have has definitely impacted my work, but whatever version of other identities I am carrying with me have also impacted, and that confluence, I'm glad I have the luxury to have that. I'm glad I'm not straight-jacketed into some, you know, be like this, be like that, whatever.
So the closest thing to your Sindhi identity is food.
I mean, for now it's food. There's a little bit of music. There's like I forget the name of the band, but there are some very interesting bands in Pakistan, in India, that have composed their own songs, etc. I'm not attracted to Sindhi music purely because when I was growing up, a lot of Sindhi devotional music was played at home. Bhagwanti, Navani and all these people, and they're very nasal, okay, like it's screechy sounds which I couldn't handle. I don't like a lot of Hindi music, old Hindi music, because they're very screechy, you know. तो तभी जमा नहीं. अभी थोड़ा बहुत जमता है when you have a slightly more open-minded approach to it. And नाम याद नहीं आ रहे, but there are some cool people doing cool things. Food is there. Then there's a lot of writers. There's a lot of young writers who are doing interesting stories, books, some researchers. Like I would have never been, you know, no researcher would have, you know, sat me down and had a word with me about anything if not for this book. Otherwise, I'm just like an assignment photographer, right? Before this, so off topic, but one woman once wrote to me saying that, you know, I'm researching on water in urban spaces and I've seen X kind of photographs that you have taken. They're not on your website. It's a very essential part of my study. I need to refer to them anyhow. And I was like, I don't even know that you've been doing this on the side, which is okay, cool, whatever works. But she brought in a perspective that I had no idea. I think that's, I mean, like, I'm trying to close the loop here, that identity is like a lot of people trying to bring lots of things to the table. You get influence, you take it forward, you take it downward, depends on you.
What do you think about a creative block, if you have one, and what are your ways of dealing with it?
It happens. A creative block happens to anybody and everybody. It happens to masons also on a bad day. Up a tile or things like that. So it's different people have different ways. Like in my case, I would revisit old work. I would go to places that I'm familiar with. I would meet somebody, talk to someone. But I feel like at, earlier I used to stress about it a lot. कि creative block, what to do. अभी नहीं. जब आया है तो जाएगा भी ना, थोड़ी उधर बैठने वाला.
Logical.
It's the way you take it, a disease. If it comes, it's going to go. Either it's going to take you along with it, or it's going to go. That's it.
Can you roll another 5 minutes in that one?
Yeah, so this is done. I'll put this camera in.
Yeah. Is there something about photojournalism that you did not know when you joined it, but over the years you've gained that knowledge and would like to tell a new person considering photojournalism?
I would focus only on mental health, because the better, stronger you are to take, because there are bad days, there are very, very bad days when you don't get the kind of images, you get pushed around, etc. All those things you will learn on the job, how to protect yourself, left hand, ye, wo, दुनिया भर का जो tricks of the trade you will learn. If you're not able to restrain your head when it matters the most, then You mentioned about one photographer, and that photographer has managed to put me in a position where my finger is twisted because of his anger. His anger led to two other people trying to restrain the situation, being dragged into it for no reason. And there are many such photographers on field who are unable to, आज खाना नहीं खाया अच्छे से तो आज असाइनमेंट पे हक दिया, फिर जाके किसी और से लड़ाई किया, फिर बॉस से लड़े, फिर ऐसा किया, फिर वैसा किया. तो वो जो लूप अगर कहीं पे वो क्लोज करना नहीं जानते हो ना, तो बहुत बुरे फंसते हो. सो extreme importance to mental health. Second thing, I don't know, say you're a Raghu Rai fan, you know Raghuji, or he's in that age bracket 60, 70. You must know young people also. Like there's a lot of things that are happening very fast, and if you don't know somebody from the 19-20-year-old bracket, you are going to be outdated before you can even spell things out. It's happening very fast, and it's like now I realize why somebody like I had a friend, I still have that friend, very dear friend, Amit Gupta. He was a chandelier salesman, and he moved over to sound engineering. Everybody said midlife crisis, ऐसा यो. And I was like his wingman, हम लोग smoke up वगैरह सब कुछ करते थे वगैरह. And he introduced me to Pink Floyd, jazz, ये वो. And I would instead, show him other things. And I was just starting out in photography, so he had some feedback. So we kind of fed off each other. And that's like a slightly elderly man, a young teenager. And of course, I would have my other, the 60-year-old, 70-year-old masters and whatnot. So I was like, I'm very enamored by what this person who is in the middle of these two must, I think he got the best of both situations, right? I also did, but so now I'm actively it's unbearable to see some Instagram reels, but people are doing very interesting things there also.
What do you have to say about your type?
I don't know, I've not been into that arms race thing. I don't care, as long as it takes a photo, it's fine.
It shows in your book.
I mean, if it works, it works. Yeah, किससे खींचा, क्यों खींचा, ऐसा किया. It works for people who do that, if there is a certain result that is required, then yes, you need certain kind of gear. I would say the result decides what you use. If you want to produce something like this, then you don't really need something big and heavy.
A lot of young photographers obsess, especially during their early years, about building a personal style or a personal look.
Fine, be obsessed with it. What can I say? It's good to be obsessed, but what everyone has to, and what everyone will learn by themselves, just the way अपना धक्का लगने से ही अक्कल आता है ना, तो personal style is an evolving thing. It takes time. There is no shortcut to it. There is also the likelihood that आप 20 साल रगड़म पट्टी किया और आपका personal style बनेगा ही नहीं. तो it's like when you're planting a tree. how, in which direction, how much space it has to grow, what is the kind of root spread. If it's a coconut tree, it's going to have a root spread like this. If it's mango, it's going to have a taproot which is going to go deep inside. So what is your root spread? What is your root structure? That also defines whether you're going to grow up straight, tall, or crooked, whatever. So personal styles, it's good to have that pursuit, but they should also factor in a lot of things like their own genetic code, what they have seen growing up. A lot of inspiration comes from there, which we don't know. Like a number of years I used to think I became photographer because I saw this, I saw that, I saw this. No, first inspiration and first sighting of a camera was at home when my sister would take photos of us. And that is what like always enamored me to this gadget. It was a Minolta or something of that sort. So the moment you are able to make that link, that's like a tiny contribution into that pool of personal style.
I think the last question, outside of imagery, what inspires your aesthetics? It could be music, it could be films, it could be anything.
Everything literally. I think one has to be like a sponge, and but that also means that you squeeze out certain bits. You don't constantly keep absorbing. Even what is technically termed as bad experiences. I think the bad experiences and the bad things are far more helpful in, like, you know what you don't want, so that eases your journey, like bhai ye main nahi khayega type thing, like bahut hi khaya. So like I'm not my friend Asim Chandawar, he like watches a lot of C-grade cinema and things like that, and he's like fascinated by it. He curates like festivals and whatnot, and like his feed, I mean, if you see, he's on Instagram and Facebook, etc. अच्छा है, बट मैं नहीं देख पाएगा, 5 मिनट से ज़्यादा मैं नहीं देख पाता है वो. So I know that okay, this is not working for me, which means that I have to, so being open to it, but knowing what works for me, and I think that also evolves and changes.
Some 5 examples. Like, think of your favorite artist, favorite film, favorite book.
Favorite book, like recently I'm rereading The Shah of Shahs by Richard Kapuscinski. Again, his storytelling, now this is a translation, but his storytelling is fantastic, especially if you read The Emperor. And in The Shah of Shahs, the last page is really fantastic. Like, I think where the carpet salesman has a conversation with the author is beautiful. Music wise, days when I like Pink Floyd a lot, days when I like some random viral song, Bollywood thing. Recently there was this Meet Brothers song that went absolutely viral, and I saw the video again and again because it is shot in Kishangarh in Rajasthan, which is basically nothing but a marble slurry dump. Okay, it looks like you're in an snow-capped landscape and whatnot, baraf and है वो कचरा और कुछ नहीं. It's toxic, it's dirty. और उधर आपने इतना खतरनाक, और उधर मेरे कजिन भाई ने जाकर अपना प्री वेडिंग शूट भी किया था. मैं तो हैरान हो गया था, मतलब like the जुगाड़ of it. So, and people say a lot of bad things about commercial things like this, but it takes a lot to kind of think of these ideas, color combinations, lyrics, etc., whatever. Because I have friends in the music industry, so they tell me that there are too many minds at work at a commercial song, and you have no idea at how many stages it can go wrong, and we've seen that. Books wise, music wise, yeah, I actually make an effort to know a little bit about different things also. So like nowadays I've been reading my friend Ramu Ramanathan. He's the editor of Print Week India. So he talks like his Twitter is very interesting. There's a lot of information that he puts out, and he was giving me a lowdown on the paper industry post pandemic. So it's just a lot of useless information sometimes.
I mean, I'm sure you can contextualize them sometime later in life.
Yeah, because of the lack of work and getting into the equity thing, I wanted to do. I don't know if it's possible, but something that looks at this world, the stock market, visually.
Visual.
What
Because-
could it be? I don't know.
Because it's not a very visual place.
It's a damn boring place, and
Yeah.
it's dull, and there's nothing to it. But I'm digging, and I'm sure there is something to it that can be done. If not as a big project or whatever, at least a set of 6 images that you can keep for yourself. It's such an integral part of this city, this culture, this country. I mean, like, many families have survived the last year based on it. So, somewhere it has to come through in popular culture, apart from a web series or whatever.
And do you have any personal projects coming up? And do you keep working on personal projects?
No, I don't have that kind of rigor. I have ideas that happen, like that afterlife thingy. If something catches my eye, I'll do it. Last whole year, I decided not to be harsh on myself. I don't have any images of this pandemic that I can even show anybody. My entire 2021 folder is empty, apart from 2 assignments that I did. Because I felt that maybe little bit of self-reflection is necessary to figure out the way forward. By pushing myself, I was not really achieving. So that's another thing that does not happen in news. That okay, if a guy is not able to crack it, kind of, okay. I keep saying guy, but if the colleague is not able to crack it, then usko thoda रहने दो.
Is there anything that you would like to say to a prospective photojournalist outside of all this? Last question.
I would say don't even think of it as photojournalism. Think of it as just observing life, observing people. It's a great skill. It's a great thing to have, the ability to see, the ability to portray something. Okay? And don't fall for these categories. What is photojournalism today can be street photography tomorrow, can be documentary tomorrow, will be archival tomorrow, will be staged, whatever this thing tomorrow. Stop trying to categorize your own work. Let other people do what they want. If somebody calls this book a documentary book, fine, you are free to do it. I wouldn't call it anything. That's why there is no visual also on it. Like, I don't want to categorize it as a photo book. So try and rid yourself of categories as much as you want, as much as you can. Deploy them at will. Be in control of the categories. Don't let that control you in any way. Because I have been on the side where we fought with our employer at HT saying that अपने को photographer लिख के नहीं चाहिए visiting card पे, photojournalist चाहिए. And we were 5 of us, and I remember now I think the HR guy or somebody was also like, क्या बोल रहे हो, क्या होने वाला है इससे? तुमको क्या लगता है an ordinary हवलदार is going to look at your card and say, sorry, it sounds classist or whatever, but so now लिख दो photographer लिखना है, कुछ भी लिखो. Just free yourself of it. Let others, kind of have a go at it.
Thank you so much, Ritesh.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much for giving us your time and your insight about all of this wonderful work. And we wish you best of luck for all your future projects.
You too, man. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much.